Hello YouTube Frogs, welcome back to an updated complete guide, this time covering the triple banner Stenchnian comrade Tartaglia, or Childe. I'll be referring to him throughout this video as Tartag. As usual, we'll be taking a look at 3-star, 4-star, 5-star weapon choices, going over his talents and optimizing his stance change playstyle, explaining his constellations, artifact choices, team compositions, and showcasing him in the current abyss. With regards to artifact choices, we'll be covering the Shimenawa set and any changes to playstyle that the 4-piece may prefer. The new 5-star Polar Star boat released in 2.2 will also be covered in this guide, kept at level 80 at R1. Alright, let's get into it. Everything will be timestamped for your convenience, so feel free to skip around for what you need. But the timestamps aren't the only thing in the description. We also have a download link for the sponsor of this video, Raid Shadow Legends. Just like Genshin, Raid is a game you can collect countless characters, including some awesome characters from specific factions like Dark Elves. Characters like Ruel, the Huntmaster, or Queen Eva, or Rien, the Conjurer, or Lydia the Death Siren, or Lyria is a Dark Elf that will definitely fit your fancy. The Dark Elves excel at debuffs and are super strong additions to any team. And yeah, I named a bunch of characters, but that's okay because Raid provides plentiful amounts of free rewards for progressing the game and allowing you to consistently summon all the characters you love. And once you find a character you really like, here's Kale for example. The game provides a bunch of resources to build your favorite characters and make them extremely powerful. In this month of October, Raid's got an endless schedule of special events and activities, including festive Halloween stuff towards the end of the month, tournaments, brand new legendary champions, including a spoopy one, a bunch of rewards, and more. With some huge updates coming soon, Raid's been packed to the brim with content, so there's really never been a better time to get started. And if you want an even bigger head start, all you have to do is click the link in the description or scan the QR code right here. New players will get an epic hero, Chinoru, who is amazing in the Doom Tower, 200,000 silver, 1 EXP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard, so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in-game. Those rewards will be in your inbox for the next 30 days only. Super simple, just click the link in the description and I'll see you in-game. Alright, here's my Tartag. Unlike my usual guide, since this is a rerun, unfortunately, my stats are mostly max invested. He's level 90 out of 90, Constellation 6, with 7, 11, 11 talents. I really wish I could untoggle the Constellations here, and that would also reduce his talents to 7, 8, 8, but this will have to do. So the damage output you'll be seeing is much higher than a base invested level 80 C0 level 6 talent Tartag, so please focus on the comparison between weapons instead of the absolute damage. We'll be running my best 4-piece Heart of Depth set with a standard DPS main stat build, attack, hydro, and crit rate. Brief pause here for my current artifacts. I do have fairly well invested pieces, so the stats you'll see here are indicative of a high-end Tartag build. I'll be swapping this crit rate mask to a crit damage mask for the relevant crit rate weapons to balance their crit ratio. Here's a glimpse at his general stats. Attack will vary depending on the weapon, crit rate will be maintained around 60 to 70%, crit damage will hover between 160 to 240% depending on the weapon, and recharge will stabilize at 116%. Alright, time for talents. Tartag is the first and currently only stance changing character that we have. Normal attack. His melee stance has its own set of multipliers defined in his elemental skill, but before we move there, this is a great place to explain his Riptide effect. So, a fully charged aim shot, and more importantly, his melee stance normal charge crits from his Ascension 4 talent apply Riptide status to his enemies. There are 3 activations to this Riptide status. First is Riptide Flash / Burst from his ranged charge shot. Riptide Flash is 3 low multiplier AoE hit combo that scales off of normal attack. Generally, I would ignore these since Tartag's on-field time is mainly in melee stance. Riptide Burst is a single AoE hit procced off of enemy death that spreads Riptide status to nearby enemies. The damage is not really noticeable, but the effect is important that Riptide spreads when defeating an enemy. Second activation is Riptide Slash from his melee stance or elemental skill. This will be the most noticeable proc and is a single AoE hit that is counted as elemental skill damage. So weapon passives like Stringless increase this damage. This procs every 1.5 seconds. In this demonstration, the extra procs of Riptide that you see happening every 4 seconds are my Tartag's C4 activating. Man, I wish I could untoggle Constellations for these demos. Third activation is Riptide Blast from his melee stance Burst. This will consume the Riptide and deal a single AoE hit that is counted as burst damage. Weapon passives like Stringless increase this damage. And as mentioned, an extra activation to Riptide status is on Tartag C4, and we'll go over that one in the Constellation section. Notice that all the Riptide activations are AoE. With how often they proc and how easy they apply and spread, we can see how strong Tartag's potential is for AoE damage. Alright, onto his elemental skill. So this is his stance change ability that is a unique set of multipliers for his melee autos. Besides Riptide Slash that we discussed already, important things to note. charge attack stamina cost of 20 with a solid multiplier and fast spam capability. Also a maximum duration of 30 seconds and a preemptive cooldown of 6 to 36 seconds. So at Constellation 0, the cooldown here is just how long it has been active plus 6 seconds. So for most rotations, Tartag will be on the field for about 8 to 15 seconds. So the cooldown here will hover between 14 to 20 seconds. Now with Constellation 1, with the decrease of cooldown of 20%, the 14 to 20 seconds goes down to 11 to 16 seconds. Finally is Elemental Burst. This is a very high multiplier single AoE hit that has a ranged and a melee form. So the ranged form has lower damage, applies Riptide status, and refunds 20 flat energy. Now the melee form has higher damage, consumes and removes the Riptide status for additional damage. Both of these burst forms are valuable and contribute to different playstyles. We'll jump into this real shortly after covering his passive talents. So, Ascension 1, first Ascension talent. This is simple. Riptide duration is extended an additional 8 seconds for a maximum duration of 18 seconds. The base is 10 seconds. Ascension 4, Riptide status is applied during his normal charged auto crits during melee stance. And his unique talent, normal attack level +1. So ironically enough, this passive talent looks good on paper, but is in practice not very useful. Tartag himself benefits very little from his normal attack talent since it doesn't affect his melee stance. Riptide Burst is the only thing that benefits, and it only procs on enemy death. And typical team compositions that we'll cover later in the video also don't benefit too heavily from this passive, since the compositions are more burst oriented to take advantage of AoE. So, general talent order that I would recommend is Elemental Skill, because he had a separate multiplier here, Elemental Burst, and then Normal Attack. For the skill and the burst, I'd recommend to level 8 and beyond. The normal attack can stay level 1, unless you want to try out physical Tartag means, which I definitely did not try in a previous video. Okay, so on to playstyle for Tartag, and we'll also discuss how Shimenawa's 4-piece compares to his known artifact set, Heart of Depth. So I would say there are two major playstyles, and they center around his burst forms. Range burst playstyle. I would lead with the range burst and then change the melee stance for the autos there. This is effectively a 40 energy cost rotation, since his range burst refunds 20 energy. 55 energy cost rotation with Shimenawa's 4-piece activation, consuming 15 of that energy. This is, in my opinion, an extremely flexible and effective rotation that takes advantage of initial groupings from off-field setup supports to easily maximize his range burst AoE before he runs around in melee stance. This also supports both Heart of Depth and Shimenawa's artifact sets. Here's a demo of Shimenawa's 4-piece activating for this playstyle. The second is the melee burst playstyle. In this case, I would stance change first, then optionally auto crit for a Riptide, and then melee burst, and then melee stance autos. This is a more nuke-based rotation that maximizes burst damage immediately with an extra Riptide blast damage if Riptide is applied first, but it sacrifices the ranged energy refund. Heart of Depth is the only artifact set here since this requires stance change first before burst. Notice the difference in ending energy level compared to range burst playstyle. So in both playstyles, melee stance autos is a preference of normal and charge attacks. These clips mix together a melee stance 6-hit, and then 3 first hit plus charge attack combos. So this is an arbitrary setup that I chose to showcase both normal spam and an N1 plus charge combo, not intended to be an optimal rotation. And then general tips for reminders: Rust players prioritize normal attack spamming. This is just N16 over and over again. All other weapons can weave in the first hit damage plus a charge attack to maximize DPS at the cost of stamina. So with regards to both of these playstyles, my personal recommendations to most players is getting used to the range burst playstyle. It allows the most flexibility on artifacts and uptime on burst. Now for my C6 Tartag whales, go straight for the melee burst playstyle to capitalize on the C6 reset. Okay, time for weapon comparisons. Here's what we'll be comparing. For 3-star weapons, we have Ravenbow, which is the budget hydro choice. And we also have Slingshot. Even though the passive does not benefit melee stance, the crit rate secondary is still valuable as an early game weapon. For 4-star weapons, we have Hamayumi and Prototype Crescent as craftable options. We have Blackcliff and Viridescent as the Star Glitter and Battle Pass option. We have Alley Hunter and Rust as the gacha attack % weapons. Stringless we're going to showcase for burst only, and Windbloom Ode. This is a free older event bow from 1.4. For the 5-star weapons, we have Ammel's Bow, Skyward Harp, Thundering Pulse, and Polar Star. So for my 5-star weapons, the non-Polar Star weapons are all R590. My Polar Star is currently R180, mainly for the comparison to the 4-star weapon options. A future video will showcase Polar Star's ascension to R590 and then compare it with my other max bows. In this video though, we'll do a little math to estimate the difference between R180 to R590 Polar Star, so you guys can see how each 5-star bow compares at R590 as well. For my artifacts, we'll be running a 4 Heart of Depth for all of the demos, running an attack %, Hydro Goblet, and Crit Rate Mask. I'll be switching to a crit damage mask for certain crit rate weapons. Pause for the stats if you need to. And as a friendly reminder, I will be using crit rate food to make testing easier for myself. The damage numbers will not be inflated. This is purely to save time. All the final damage numbers will be compared as fully crit numbers. Alright, time to water the OBLVYN. So, for the 3-star weapons, we have the Raven Bow up first. This is a budget 3-star option, providing additional damage to Hydro Pyro with additional elemental mastery, perfect for a vaporized comp. And the other 3-star, Slingshot. Solid budget stat stick with a crit rate secondary. Passive unfortunately does not work with the melee stance, the 60% damage increase here. So, these 3-star options compare roughly the same, and solid enough to use for early game players starting out. Slingshot may be easier to build around for the crit rate boost. Raven Bow will have the edge for a vaporized comp Tartag. Alright, for the 4-star weapons, we're going to begin with the Hamayumi. This is the new Inazuma bow craftable that is a stable starting point for any DPS bow unit. Grants a small boost to normal and charge damage that doubles when energy is 100%. Next, the other craftable, Prototype Crescent. No passive active here since the OBLVYNs don't have a registered weak point. The head looks like one, but it doesn't actually count. Now the crit 4 stars, Blackcliff first, no passive active here. Viridescent Hunt next, you'll see its passive activate. And for the Viridescent Hunt, I'll be switching to a crit damage mask. Now to the Gadget attack percent weapons, beginning with the unique Alley Hunter bow. This is currently unobtainable, but for completion, and since it has a uniquely strong passive, we'll demo it. I will switch back to my crit rate mask. Next, the normal attack steroid, Rust. Both normal attacks and charge attacks demoed to showcase the difference. Finally, situational weapons. String list for burst-only nukes. And lastly, Windbloom Ode at R590, the free event bow from Windbloom Festival in 1.4. So, those are the 4-star weapons. Craftables are still able to keep up relatively smoothly with the rest of the pack, maintaining relatively equal burst damage and losing in normal charge only significantly to the Rust and Alley Hunter, which is to be expected. Between the Blackcliff and the Viridescent Hunt, Viridescent Hunt definitely shines quite well with very consistent damage and a perfectly synergistic passive to assist AoE damage. Unfortunately though, it is gated behind the Battle Pass wall. Blackcliff is a stable stat stick even at 0 stacks. With more stacks, Blackcliff is a stronger option than the craftables, but this is dependent on enemies. Alley Hunter has very high front-loaded damage due to its passive, and works very well with his on-off playstyle, allowing the bow to charge up between rotations. Rust has the largest normal attack steroid, enabling an easy left-click spam playstyle. I would avoid N1 plus charge spam if running the Rust. Stringless is still a good option for nuke burst-based playstyle, though if running an esports one-shot nuke Tartag, you'll likely have access to the 5-star bows, which continuously get a little bit stronger. Windbloom Ode from 1.4 is losing steam as a free event weapon with the release of Hamayumi, but still maintains decent damage if you already have one leveled up. Next, 5-star weapons. With the introduction of 5-star Polar Star, the bow industry adds another very powerful bow to already one of the strongest weapon rosters in the game. Besides Elegy for the End, which is a support-based bow, all 4 of the other 5-star options are exceptionally strong and bode well for Tartag. Let's begin with Almost Bow, which is not exactly designed for Tartag, but it still packs a punch. Next, Skyward Harp, one of the easiest weapons in the game to build around since it provides both crit rate and crit damage built in. For this weapon, I'll be using the crit damage mask. Next, the recently strongest choice for Tartag, released with Yoimiya, Thundering Pulse. Easy to maximize the stacks for, and optimal for a left-click spam normal attack playstyle. Here's a demo of both 2-stack and 3-stack damage. I'll be switching back to a crit rate mask for this weapon. Finally, 5-star Polar Star. So as of recording this, I currently only have R180. We'll do a little math to showcase what it would be at R590, so you guys can see both R180 and R590 estimations. As mentioned earlier as well, we'll have another video coming out with a proper showcase of each of these 5-star and R590 bows compared with each other. Here's a demo of 2 to 3 stack damage and 3 to 4 stack damage at R180. So for 5-star weapons, there's not really a weapon that falls short for Tartag. He can utilize all the current DPS bows without a fault. Amos is still a solid stat stick, Skyward Harp is balanced and easy to build crit weapon, Thundering is excellent for normal attack spamming, and Polar Star is a similar Skyward Harp but with stacks of attack percent. Now for Polar Star R180 to R590 estimation. 76 base attack increase from 532 to 608 contributes to about 9% damage. 12% skill to burst damage increase from 12 to 24%. And then the stacks goes from 10, 20, 30, 48 to 20, 40, 60, and 96. Everything doubles here. So for 3 to 4 stacks, it's a plus 30 to 48% attack increase, which contributes to about a 15 to 24% damage increase. If Bennett is buffing Tartag with this weapon on, then the damage increase drops to 12 to 20%. So combining all of this, the estimated lower end of increase is about 20 to 30% damage increase. So we'll average to 25% increase from R180 to R590. With this estimation, Polar Star is very close to the Thundering Pulse damage, with higher burst but lower normal attack damage. Polar Star in this case is a little bit more universal than Thundering Pulse, since its attack percent stack gain affects all sorts of damage. In the ideal setting, Polar Star would likely inch out slightly ahead of Thundering Pulse. Alright, let's go over my artifact recommendations for Tartag, beginning with 4-piece options. For a universal, no caveat playstyle choice, 4-piece Heart of Depth is the most stable choice. Perfect synergy with elemental skill activation, and a 15-second normal charge buff duration that roughly fits most off-field burst durations that would typically be paired with him. Now, with the release of Inazuma, Shimenawa's Reminiscence is now also on the table as an alternative 4-piece set, granting 18% attack versus 50% hydro and 50% normal charge damage at the cost of 15 energy versus 30% normal charge for part of depth. The Shimenawa's provides a stronger buff with its sacrifice to burst uptime. As mentioned in the playstyle section, Shimenawa's works perfectly with the Range Burst 2 skill activation attack rotation. Range Burst will refund 20 energy, of which 15 will be consumed by Shimenawa's. Now when it comes to which set to farm, like I mentioned in the prep video, it comes down to which dungeon provides the most efficient dual usage of their partner artifact set, which is either Cryo for the Heart of Depth or Emblem for Shimenawa's. Now, 2-piece options. Heart of Death for sure for the 15% hydro damage bonus, and then one of the following. Gladiator or Shimenawa's both grant 18% attack, Noblesse is an option for 20% burst damage, and Emblem is an option for 20% recharge. For these 2-piece options, it is much more important to focus on substat gain since the set bonus provides a marginal boost. For new players, focus on running attack percent pieces until these 5-star artifact dungeons open up. For main stat pieces, a standard DPS build, attack time piece, hydro goblet, and a crit rate or crit damage mask. An attack goblet is a suitable alternative if you don't have a satisfactory hydro goblet yet. Prioritize whatever crit mask enables the closest 1 to 2 crit rate crit damage ratio. Most will opt for a crit rate mask here. In the case of a crit damage mask, this can be forced if your crit rate can be maintained above 60% from weapon and substats. Alright, now that we've covered the core of his build, let's swim by his constellations. If you guys watched the Tartag prep video, a lot of this will be overlapping. Constellation 1, this is a strict minus 20% cooldown for his elemental skill. So his 6 to 36 second cooldown becomes 5 to 29 seconds. The main benefit from this constellation is easier team rotations. On average, most rotations will have Tartag on the field for at max 15 seconds, which means his cooldown will be from 18 to 15 seconds-ish. Since his burst cost is mid to low, especially with range burst playstyle at 40 effective cost, the cooldown decrease is very nice to continue looping his rotations earlier. Constellation 2, this is a flat 4 energy refund upon defeating Riptide affected enemies. This is 1/15 of his melee burst cost or 1/10 with his range burst. So in an AoE setting, he basically has 0 problems with energy looping with minimal recharge. Constellation 3, a simple +3 levels to his skill scaling, which is his most important source of damage. It's better front-loaded here than at C5. Constellation 4 introduces additional Riptide procs corresponding to the stance that he's in. So these proc once every 4 seconds and are independent of his usual 1.5 second procs from his skill or 0.7 second procs from his charge shot. So here's a demo from My Tartag so you can see both of these in action. So in practice, Constellation 4 just means that there will be a lot of hydro numbers when you hit stuff with Tartag. That's honestly the best way to explain it. From a technicality standpoint, this can make rotations a bit more complicated since every 4 seconds, this C4 proc is a hydro application, which can ruin vaporized reactions and make them proc when you don't want them to. Something to be mindful if you're C4+. Constellation 5, the burst +3 levels, nothing special here. And then Constellation 6, this adds a complete cooldown reset to his elemental skill only if his burst is activated in melee stance form. This encourages him to be played melee burst playstyle instead of range burst. Combined with the C2 though, and Riptide energy orb generation, his energy is not a problem even for looping melee burst. Okay, let's jump into team composition discussion. So Tartag maximizes value as a rotational on-field AoE hydro enabler. Instead of offering individual viable team members, I would recommend staying within 3 composition types to maximize his value. Like I mentioned in the prep video, these 3 stable compositions focus around Vaporize, Electrocharge or Taser, and Freeze. The Vaporize comp relies on a dance between Tartag and Xiangling, and usually a method of grouping from Anemo running Viridescent Venerer for crowd control. The focus of this composition is to abuse Xiangling's burst ability to ignore internal cooldown and reverse Vaporize against Tartag's hydro application. Next, the Taser comp maximizes AoE damage, usually with Beto's burst bounces and double Electro to assist with energy refund. The second Electro can be any of Fischl, Keqing, Raiden, Lisa for maximum value. Sara also works but is less optimal due to how her kit works. The last slot is usually reserved for a healer if running double Electro. However, Anemo Viridescent Venerer or crowd control can be slotted in by removing the second Electro or foregoing a healer altogether. Alright, lastly is the Freeze composition. So this composition focuses on pure crowd control with a consistent cryo applier like Rosaria, Kaya, or even Ganyu for her burst. Add in double cryo for the additional crit, usually with Diona for healing and shielding, Last slot can be more crowd control from an emo, or Xing Qiu for even more DPS. Now, Tartag is going to have downtime. The longer he's on the field, the longer he's going to be off the field. This becomes an actual problem beyond swapping to supports for skills if Tartag is on the field for more than 8 seconds. The compositions that I mentioned previously have the flexibility of leaving one slot for another sub DPS that can fill this gap. I'm going to mention a few specific candidates for each composition, but these are not exhaustive. Uta or Yoimiya for Vaporized Tartag, Keqing or Raiden for Taser Tartag, Ayaka or Ganyu for Freeze Tartag. The characters that I mentioned have their own specific playstyles that aren't optimized with Tartag, but still worth mentioning in case you don't have perfect setups for everyone. Now, let's showcase some comps. We'll draw my Abyss floor 12 and showcase his 3 compositions. So My Tartag C6. So to compensate a little for this, I'll be using a 1-star level 70 bow and only using range burst so I don't get a free reset. Stats look like this. Alright, cue the music, Mr. Cope. And with the showcase complete, that about wraps up the core of this guide. With extremely potent AoE damage output, Tartag excels at clearing large groups of mobs and enabling multiple different compositions through his rotational playstyle and Riptide effect. If this guide helped you understand Tartag a little better, consider liking the video and subscribing to the YouTube channel for more similar content. It's free and I'd really appreciate it. I also stream nearly every day at twitch.tv/Xlice, so if you happen to watch Twitch, consider dropping a follow. Thanks for watching, and I wish that everyone still trying to pull Tartag the best of luck. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.